Hello, BookTube. I thought I'd resume today something I used to do quite often on this channel, a feature that I call Last Week in BookTube, uh, in which I look back at the last week or so on BookTube and point out some videos that I really liked, that I want to recommend to you in case you missed them. It's not meant at all to be comprehensive. I watch an enormous amount of BookTube, and I like a lot of what I watch that won't make it onto these lists. This is just a sampling. But I wanted to start off with just some general things, starting with Neil Griffiths. So why not start with the best? And he did a video about author photos that could easily have been an hour. It was him ruminating on different kinds of author photos, and as is instinctive, I guess, with authors, investing those photos with stories. and character readings. And he did it as a prelude to showing his own author photo for his upcoming book. And it was all fascinating, but the element I wanted to draw your attention to was that in the course of video talking about author photos, he holds up two books that, since they're in his possession and since he likes them, count as book recommendations. And I wanted to wholeheartedly second those two recommendations. The first one is The Runaway Soul by Harold Brodkey. I agree with him that Brodkey's author photo is just a hair shy of utterly insufferable. But the other book is one that hasn't had enough attention at all, despite the fact that it appeared on the appropriate Steve Reads list at the end of its year of publication. And that is The Castle Cross at Magnet Carter by Kia Cothran. It's a gigantic contemporary novel that not enough people, even diehard readers of contemporary fiction, have noticed and praised for the masterpiece that it is. So I want to recommend the author photo video just in general, but I also wanted to second those recommendations, and I'll list all these things down below. Then Paperback Junky, a channel that I hope you're all subscribed to. Actually, these are all channel recommendations in addition to everything else, unless I clarion call otherwise. I usually won't waste the time with that anymore. Paperback Junky is doing a series on his channel called Watch Me Write a Novel. It's incredible. He's taking the reader through every step of writing a novel, and it's really, really interesting. Then there's a booktuber. I think I'm going to butcher his name, but I think his name is Matthew Sciarappa, and he did a really good video on he's a bookseller, like a lot of you. And like I once was for 25 years. He's a bookseller, and he did a really good video on the bookseller book customer relationship in bookstores. A video that I think would have been slightly more diplomatic if he hadn't been so tired when he made it, but we're all the luckier for it. And again, as with the author photos video, I could easily have listened for an hour, and it reminded me that the number one, I have threatened on this channel many times to make an hour-long video, and the number one candidate for subject suggestion by a wide margin from dozens and dozens and dozens of you is an hour-long video about my own time as a bookseller. And as watching his video, I could easily see how easy that would be to do. The last thing in the general category I wanted to mention is something that's also an urging for the rest of you to get involved. Lukash on his channel, he and Curtis Books and Films are doing a thing that we are dubbing ShakeTube 2017, in which he picks a little more than a dozen Shakespeare plays and does a read along with them in a kind of innovative way, where each person in the read along reads the book or the play involved that week, and then at the end of the week does a video about it. So it's not a whole bunch of the cool kids gathering on the Voxer that the kids like so much, and it's not split screen or anything like that. It's kind of an individualized read along. And I'm hoping I myself am going to participate, and I think all the rest of you should too. Believe me, you have time to read a Shakespeare play a week, and you'll be glad you did. When you've got a reason, when you're engaged in a group of people who are reading it too, that's fun. I can't wait to see what kind of bounty of videos crops up at the end of every one of those weeks. It's going to go on until the beginning of December. One Shakespeare play a week, and I say whether you've read the play or not, you should participate, because it's just a lot of fun. And then I wanted to mention some book reviews. Book reviews, I think, are under a slight cloud at BookTube. They get fewer views, and BookTube still cares about views. BookTube should not care about views. The only thing that BookTube should care about, there are two, that any BookTuber should care about, is making the video enjoyable for you to do, and two, is it generating friendships and comments in your comments field and elsewhere. That's all. It shouldn't matter how big your channel is. It shouldn't matter views on any video. Those are the only two things that should matter. The community. Are you connecting with other books, with other book fans, and are you talking about stuff? That's why we're all here. But anyway, I myself am a book reviewer, so I naturally pay attention to book reviews when they show up on BookTube. I've got 4 I want to talk about that point at something. In fact, most of the things on this Last Week in BookTube episode point at something I'm going to bring up at the end of the episode. But you'll be able to spot it long before I do, because I've come to notice you're all quite a lot brighter than I am. The first one is the Bookchemist, who did a review of Lev Grossman's The Magicians. And as usual, when you get him talking about contemporary fiction, he really can't be beat. So it's a really good review. Then BookBabble did a review of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which has sold 80 billion copies and has been on everyone's reading list for, 10 years? 11 years? Something like that. And it was a really good review. It totally engaged the book. And then PaperBird did a review of The Interrogative Mood by Paget Powell, which I had never heard of, and I was very happy to watch the review. And then we come back to, I'm going to massacre his name a second time, maybe, Matthew Sciarappa, who did a review of Sarah Taylor's The Laurers, which is a comparatively new book that really didn't get, like the Kia Cawthorne, it really didn't get the widespread attention or acclaim that I thought it deserved. And it was great to see a review of it on BookTube. And then I wanted to, now that we're done with the book reviews, I wanted to get to just a bunch of other random stuff before we wrap up this time. And the first one is Brian at Brian's Book Bastion announced in a recent video that he got engaged to his offstage heckler, the voice you'll hear on his videos that always takes him down a peg when he gets a little too full of himself. And I thought that video congratulations were in order, and also a tiny bit of warning that if he thinks that getting engaged is going to stop the heckling, well, I'll leave it to those of you who are engaged or married out there to tell him how wrong he is. J.D. Estrada did a video asking a question: is there a place on BookTube for slow readers? So for people who, you get to your Friday reads or your weekly wrap-up video or whatever, and it's the same books, or the same book, singular. And is BookTube geared towards something different, towards a much higher turnaround? Of course, the video was extra fascinating for me, because I'm perfectly willing to admit that my book turnover rate is a trifle unusual, and it does not just because it has to be. It's also because I do nothing else. I'm a very fast reader, and I do nothing but read. So I thought his discussion was fascinating because, of course, the answer is yes, right? If it's all about the booktuber. If you are reading Resurrection by Leo Tolstoy and you're a slow reader, or even you're a normal-paced reader who has an enormous amount of stuff to do and can't always get around to settling down with Tolstoy, but you're going to make a video on it every week, if you're interestingly engaged in what you're reading, if that part is covered, then I don't care how long it takes you. And I don't care that it's the same book every week, and I don't think anybody else would either. It's all about the booktuber, not the speed or the book or the glitz or the newness or the price tag. Nothing like that. It's all about the readers here. But I've ranted. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Piera Forde did a wonderful video on her reading routine. It's called My Reading Routine. And of course, it's just the type of video that I love, the kind of nosy video where I get to see into your lives, because that just fascinates me. It fascinates me almost as much as the actual books you're reading. And it made me wonder what such a video would look like for myself. I think it would be intense. It would be like the Andy Warhol 8.5-hour video of someone sleeping. It would be just about as interesting, because unlike a lot of other reading routines, you already know from rants in previous videos, I don't drink cocoa or anything else while I'm reading. I don't listen to music while I don't have anything on in the background. I don't do anything at all while I'm reading except read. I just sit there and read. The only interruption these days is medical. I'm caretaking a creaky old dog who is losing control of her bowels. So there are interruptions, but they're not filmable. And the last thing in the general category that before we wrap up here was Amy Jane Reeds did a video that was utterly remarkable, brave, a remarkable, brave video. It's called Thoughts from a 27-Year-Old Woman in August 2017. And it really does feel like she's just capturing her thoughts as they roll along. And I thought it was wonderful. Just wonderful. Peaks and valleys, coherent stuff, and more rambling. I thought it was an incredibly truthful video. And at one point, there's a quote. And I wrote it down because I wanted to get it right, and I want to make sure to share it with you, although I'll link the video. I want you all to see the video. And the quote is this: "Hope is more possible than you know right now. You'll get there." I like that a lot. And that was it. That's just a brief snapshot of last week in BookTube. And I wanted to finish with something that isn't BookTube, sort of extracurricular thing that I still wholeheartedly recommend. And in this case, it's someone I've recommended before. But as long as he keeps doing great work that's worth your time on the iPad while you're cooking, then I'm going to keep recommending him. It's Isaac Arthur, and he does science-related videos that are unapologetically intelligent. And one of his latest ones is about colonizing Mars. What that would entail. What would be the reasons for it? What would be the difficulties and maybe even the ease? And what would be the long-term picture? Just there isn't an aspect of it that he doesn't cover. And whether you have been fascinated with the subject, like I have been fascinated with Mars forever and ever, because Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars novels are my favorite things in the whole world. But even if you haven't been, if you've read science fiction about colonizing Mars, or even if the subject has never occurred to you, you're going to love the video. You're going to love the video. So that's it. That is last week in BookTube, and I'll try to remember to leave the links to these all down below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, BookTube.